The Art of Spending Money. Simple Choices for a Richer Life by Morgan Housel. Introduction. The Quest of the Simple Life. This section introduces the main idea of the book, which is that using money wisely is an art, not a science, because it involves the unpredictable nature of human psychology. The concept of the quest of the simple life itself comes from a 1907 book by William Dawson, who observed that many wealthy Londoners devoted their lives to chasing money and success, yet seemed unhappy, while those living simpler lives in the country were comparably joyful. In this context, the simple life does not necessarily mean living without luxury or fancy homes, but rather making sure that money works for you instead of the other way around. Dawson's observation was that people relentlessly trying to get more money were actually held prisoner by their obsession, which controlled their sanity, relationships, and quality of life. They wanted wealth to be happier, but their constant obsession with money resulted in anxiety and unhappiness, creating a vicious cycle they often failed to see. This highlights a key problem. Sometimes people get what they want, like money, but realize it is not what they truly need, such as family, friends, or health, leading to disappointment. For the modern reader, the quest of the simple life starts with a deep examination and understanding of oneself. It means choosing the lifestyle you want to live instead of feeling addicted to the mere appeal of it. The goal is to make a life, and only a fool would sacrifice their actual life for the endless pursuit of an imaginarily better one. This pursuit of happiness involves realizing that it is much harder to know what to want than it is to know what you need, and that money is less about cold numbers and more about the personal stories we tell ourselves about what matters and what success looks like. Ultimately, money is a remarkable tool that can provide a better life if you know how to use it, but knowing how to use it is very different from knowing how to acquire it. This book explores how to use money as a tool for a better life, rather than letting it use or control you, which can make it a psychological liability. All behavior makes sense with enough information. There is no single right way to handle money, because every person's choices are shaped by their own unique life experiences. When someone spends money in a way that seems illogical or frustrating to an outsider, their actions become understandable once you uncover their personal history and background. This concept is demonstrated by looking at children in the foster care system who struggle in school with poor behavior, skipping classes, and difficulty focusing on the future. It is easy for others to criticize or be confused by this behavior, asking why the children cannot behave better to secure a better future. However, within the foster care system, there's a saying that all behavior makes sense with enough information. Once you know about the insecurity, lack of love, and general uncertainty these kids have dealt with at home, it becomes clear that they're operating in constant survival mode and never learn basic social skills that other children take for granted. Understanding this background helps you quickly see why they make decisions that seem foreign to most people. The same logic applies to financial choices and spending habits. For example, a successful businessman who grew up extremely poor and felt overlooked might insist that his daughter attend the most expensive college she gets into, viewing the high tuition as a powerful symbol of the social hurdles he overcame, almost like a trophy. To someone who did not grow up feeling snubbed, this choice might seem absurd, but it makes sense when you understand the emotional wound he is trying to heal and the specific thing he is trying to accomplish. A lawyer who intensely dislikes their job might spend money carelessly to compensate for the misery of how they earned their paycheck, like someone gasping for air after being held underwater. People do not spend money only on things they find useful or fun. Their choices often reflect the psychological and social experiences of their lives. Because life experiences are dramatically different from person to person, what seems perfectly reasonable and fulfilling to one person might seem pointless or wasteful to another, and vice versa. The pursuit of money and happiness is therefore an art, not a science, and debates over spending are usually just people with different backgrounds failing to understand each other. To truly understand why people spend the way they do, You must consider their unique past, identity, hopes, and fears. The key takeaway is that you should not judge how others spend their money, but instead seek to appreciate the vast variety of human preferences. May I have your attention, please? People often believe they want expensive things, like a better car or a bigger house, but what they are truly seeking is respect, admiration, and attention from others. The desire for more money and the things it can purchase they're truly seeking is respect, admiration, and attention from others. The desire for more money and the things it can purchase frequently hides this deeper human need. People often make the simple connection that having more money will allow them to buy nicer items, and those items will, in turn, lead to greater respect and admiration. However, Housel suggests that nice possessions rarely bring the expected amount of respect, especially from the people whose opinions truly matter. To determine what genuinely matters, one can try the reverse obituary exercise, writing down what they would want their obituary to say. In this ideal self-description, almost no one would mention the horsepower of their car, the size of their home, or the cost of their clothes or jewelry. This contrast highlights that, deep down, people know material things do not actually matter as much as being loved, respected, admired, and helpful. The impulse behind wanting to rise in the social ranks is rooted not in the material goods themselves, but in the amount of love and attention a person expects to receive as a result of that higher status. As the economist Adam Smith noted long ago, people are driven by the vanity, which is the desire to be observed, to be attended to be taken notice of with sympathy, complacency, and approbation, more than they value the comfort or convenience the money can buy. The problem is that using expensive stuff to gain attention is usually the fastest way to get noticed, but this attention is not long-lasting and is least effective with the people who are most important to you, like your spouse, parents, or close friends. These important people care far more about whether you are kind, funny, intelligent, helpful, and loving. Therefore, chasing respect with possessions is like eating junk food. It is tempting and immediately satisfying, but it is damaging in the long run. If a person struggles to gain respect through qualities like intelligence, humor, or empathy, they might resort to showing off possessions as their only remaining and least effective way to gain admiration. Ultimately, if you gain respect and admiration for the person you are rather than for what you own, your desire to spend money on flashy things decreases sharply. This leads to intrinsic pride, being proud of yourself, rather than extrinsic or hubristic pride, which depends on others' opinions and is linked to anxiety and unhappiness. The happiest people I know. True happiness comes from contentment, which is feeling satisfied with what you already possess, rather than constantly wanting more. If a person's expectations increase faster than their income, they will never be truly happy with their money. When people imagine becoming happier in the future, they're often imagining themselves being content with an expensive lifestyle, but the real feeling they're chasing is that sense of contentment, where they enjoy what they have and expect nothing further. Disappointment often sets in when actual experiences bring less joy than anticipated, because the moment someone acquires something new, they immediately shift their desire to whatever they still lack. The key to happiness, therefore, is being content with what you have, and the opposite is focusing only on what is missing. A wonderful way to think about this is the story of a young man who envied the lives of rich aristocrats. The writer Marcel Proust advised the young man instead to focus on the work of artist Jean-Simeon Chardin, who painted scenes of everyday life like food, animals, and nature. The goal was for the young man to learn to say, "This is interesting, this is grand, this is beautiful like a Chardin," even when looking at something as simple as a kitchen. The book suggests that the happiest people are simply the most content people, not necessarily the richest, most successful, or healthiest. This idea is powerfully shown by the example of a grandmother-in-law who lived in retirement with very little money, relying on a meager social security check, and technically being on the verge of poverty. Yet, she was perfectly content, enjoying her small garden and reading library books, because she had little but wanted even less. She was described as one of the happiest people one could ever meet, possessing an enormous amount of psychological wealth that some of the world's richest people lacked. Her low expectations were the source of this contentment. This concept is summed up by the formula that all happiness in life is simply the gap between what a person expects and their actual circumstances. A person who has everything but still wants more will feel poorer than someone who has very little but wants nothing else. The state of enduring happiness occurs when you realize that nothing is missing, regardless of the lifestyle you lead. Furthermore, constantly telling yourself, "I would be happier if I had this new car," only highlights the fact that you are not happy in the present moment. Desire acts like a hidden debt that must be paid before any happiness can be felt. This ancient wisdom suggests that not needing wealth is more valuable than wealth itself. Everything you don't see. This chapter addresses the major gap between what people assume money can do for them and the harsh reality of what it cannot fix, emphasizing that happiness depends on far more than just income. When people envy someone else's life, they're almost always working with an incomplete picture, missing the difficult, depressing, and miserable parts that the person tries to hide. A common trap is the psychological treadmill, where people mistakenly assume that having more money will solve all their problems. When asked how much money they need to be happy, people often say about twice what they currently earn, and when they reach that goal and realize they're still unhappy, the tendency is to think they just need a little more to truly feel great. This ignores all the hidden parts of life that won't change with wealth. For instance, one of the first people to become a billionaire, Paul Getty, confessed that he envied people who were younger, stronger, more cheerful, and had better personalities than he did, showing that even immense wealth cannot fix personal misery. This points to the painful admission that once a person has money, they realize that most of what makes them happy has nothing to do with finances. This idea is reinforced by the fact that many core ingredients for a happy life, such as a loving family, good health, friendship, and meaning, cannot be bought but must be earned. For example, a big, expensive house might contribute to happiness, but only indirectly because it makes it easier to entertain friends and family, who are the true source of joy, not the house itself. Similarly, going to a beautiful vacation spot might be enjoyable, but the best part may be a week of uninterrupted, work-free time spent with family. It is easy and fun to dream about the upside of having more money, but people often ignore the baggage and negative consequences that come with it, leading to disappointment. For instance, a bigger house might bring joy in thought, but people ignore that it is harder to clean, comes with six-figure repair bills, and sometimes leads to conflicts with high-maintenance neighbors. Furthermore, a person who is already unhappy is unlikely to have their problems fixed by more money, because so many factors contribute to misery that money becomes merely a drop in the bucket amid a tsunami of other issues. The danger is that if you focus on what money can do without clearly understanding the cost of acquiring more of it, you might be fantasizing about the trophy while dismissing the stress and sacrifice of the race to get it. The book suggests that much of a good life is about what did not happen, such as the arguments a person avoided, the illnesses they stayed clear of, and the unhealthy desires they did not feed. Because so much of what is truly important in life is invisible or consists of things that never occurred, people focus too much on what is visible and easy to measure, like houses, cars, and clothes, and they severely overestimate their importance. The most valuable financial asset is not needing to impress anyone. The ability to stop trying to prove yourself to strangers is an asset of huge value that should be placed high on your personal list of worth. When a person no longer feels compelled to impress others, especially people they do not know, their overall desires tend to decrease. As a result, they grow more satisfied with what they already have, making life simpler. There are two ways people measure how well they are doing in life. Internally, based on their own happiness, and externally, based on what other people think of them. Focusing too much on what others think, the external measure, can be mentally exhausting and frustrating. The truly valuable path is nailing the internal benchmarks, where satisfaction comes from within. The quality of a person's life is deeply shaped by who they are trying to impress. The book illustrates this idea using the extreme stories of two sailors in an around-the-world race. Donald Crowhurst, who was addicted to the external opinions of his accomplishments and felt he had to win to gain attention, and Bernard Moitessier, who simply loved sailing and could not have cared less about the media or the race results. Crowhurst's obsession with external success led him to fraud and eventually ruin. While Moitessier quit the race, he was winning to continue sailing toward the Pacific Islands simply because he was happy at sea. Moitessier was fulfilled by his internal measures of happiness. The idea is that every financial choice falls into one of two categories. Either spending money to make people think differently of you, such as making them impressed or jealous, or spending money on something that genuinely feeds your soul and makes you happy. Being happy and independent is what people truly want, and controlling your life is what others genuinely admire. Therefore, not needing to prove yourself or show off is a key component of financial independence and well-being. The ability to be satisfied with your own inner scorecard is crucial. What makes you happy? True happiness is found in the contrast between what you have now and what you were previously experiencing, rather than simply having a large amount of wealth or possessions. A good life, according to this concept, includes everything you need and only some of what you want. If you have absolutely everything you want, you will actually appreciate none of what you have. The anticipation of saving up for something, the surprise of getting an unexpected item, or a positive change in circumstances is what makes a purchase feel valuable. This is demonstrated through the powerful story of Michael May, a man who regained his sight at age 46 after being completely blind since he was a baby. When May first saw an ordinary, drab office carpet, he was overwhelmed by excitement, admiring the shapes and colors, and he could not understand why other patients in the lobby were not ecstatic over the sight. Because he had never seen anything, May received an immense amount of pleasure looking at an office carpet, possibly 10,000 times more awe than most people would get from a perfect sunset. This illustrates that happiness is not objective. It is the gap between expectations and reality, or the distance between what you have and what you expected or previously had. The pleasure in having money ends at the point where living cheaply is no longer necessary. For instance, the best drink you will ever taste is tap water when you're extremely thirsty, and the best sleep comes when a newborn allows for a quick nap. Going from having nothing to being able to buy something can feel much more powerful than going from having $10 million to $20 million. The richest a person is likely to feel is when their bank account jumps from $5 to $500. A major challenge to being happy with money is fighting the psychological treadmill, where a luxury quickly turns into something you are accustomed to. One way to combat this is by respecting the idea that occasional treats create more joy than constant luxury. If you're content with a simple, modest life, an occasional nice experience feels like magic, and you appreciate and savor more. Not needing wealth is more valuable than wealth itself. By viewing money as a means to achieve occasional treats rather than perpetual needs, you can increase your well-being by managing your expectations down instead of trying to constantly push your circumstances up. The rich and the wealthy. The distinction between the rich and the wealthy lies in their relationship with money, specifically who is in control, the person or the money itself. According to this definition, being rich means you have money in the bank that allows you to buy the things you want. However, being wealthy is about having a level of control over how that money affects your freedom, personality, ambitions, and mental health. Money is a powerful tool, But if a person does not figure out how to use it correctly, the money will end up using and controlling them, making them its prisoner. This dangerous obsession with money, especially spending it, can creep into a person's life unnoticed. The belief that one would be happier with more money to spend is powerful, making it difficult to tell the difference between a healthy ambition and a harmful obsession. When money is controlling someone, they might think they're chasing wealth to live a better life. But the money is actually pulling their strings like a puppet master, demanding they chase things they may not even like or understand. For many people, money acts as both a financial asset and a psychological liability. The classic example of this difference is the Vanderbilt family, who were among the richest people on earth, yet, by this definition, some of the least wealthy. Their massive inherited fortune was largely spent by 3 generations whose main purpose seemed to be seeing who could spend it the fastest. They devoted themselves to expense, not pleasure. They purchased things as a monument to their wealth, almost worshiping it, instead of using it as a tool to improve their lives, which ultimately resulted in tragedy and absurdity. For instance, one heir, Reginald Claypool Vanderbilt, spent recklessly on liquor and gambling until he died broke at age 45. Their life was built around money, and their wealth became an insurmountable lifestyle, debt passed on to the next generation. In contrast, an example of someone considered truly wealthy is the co-founder of duty-free stores, Chuck Feeney, who gave away almost all of his $8 billion fortune. Feeney briefly tried the lavish lifestyle with luxury apartments and private jets, but quickly realized it did not make him happy because society had told him he should want those things, but they were not what truly satisfied him. Instead, giving money away made him happy. He used his immense wealth as a tool to become happier, rather than letting it control him or dictate a status-chasing life. Feeney was considered one of the freest, most independent people one could hear of. Housel suggests that the key is to ensure money remains a tool to leverage who you are, but never to define who you are. The person who is already satisfied with who they are naturally views money as a tool to make things even better, achieving the state of being wealthy. Conversely, if you blindly allow money to dictate how you live your day and control your personality, it will quickly take over. This is summarized by the powerful idea that wealth without independence is a unique form of poverty. Utility versus status. When spending money, it is vital to understand whether you are buying something for its utility, meaning its practical use and how it improves your life, or for its status, meaning how it changes what other people think of you. The fundamental value of anything you purchase is simply its ability to help you live the life you want, and nothing more. Utility focuses on owning something for yourself, such as a high-end Toyota car that is fully equipped with pleasant features like plush seats, a great sound system, and a moonroof, all of which make driving better. Status, on the other hand, is about owning something for others and their attention, such as an entry-level, less comfortable BMW that primarily offers bragging rights or changes others' opinions of you. Housel suggests an interesting way to test this. Imagine you and your family were stranded on a deserted island with no one else around to notice you, and you could have any material goods you wanted. In that situation, you would immediately prioritize comfort over appearance, function over brand, and durability over prestige, valuing utility instantly over status. A common mistake is confusing these two motivations. People often think they are purchasing something for genuine pleasure, comfort, or fulfillment, when they are actually paying for the chance that others, often unknowingly, will look at them in a positive light. This pursuit of status can lead to disappointment. For instance, a big house may become a burden to maintain, and a nice car can cause stress if you can barely afford it. In one example, a family enjoyed a low-end camp in Africa more than a luxurious hotel because the cheap camp offered utility, the opportunity to socialize with locals and meet other guests, while the luxury hotel's pursuit of status isolated them in sterile safety. Buying things primarily for their utility allows you to express your own identity. focusing on bettering your life and the lives of those you care about, regardless of the opinions of others. Conversely, chasing status often forces you to conform to what others want to see, leading you to spend time and money putting on a performance for people you may not even like. Furthermore, utility spending tends to be more durable and long-lasting. 10 years from now, you'll almost certainly still value comfort and dependability, whereas the status symbols of today, like certain clothes or a fast car, can look ridiculous or embarrassing a year later as society's trends change. The ability to value individuality over conformity is a core difference between these two motivations. Risk and regret. Good financial advice must center on minimizing future regret, rather than simply stating that a person should either live for today or save for tomorrow. The actor David Cassidy's final words, "So much wasted time," serve as a stark warning about the danger of realizing too late that one's time was squandered. True financial risk is best defined not by the amount of money a person might lose, but by the extent of regret they might feel years or decades later over the decisions they made today. Managing money involves balancing two incredibly strong forces: the power of compounding interest, which promises fortunes tomorrow for patience today, and the reality that life is short, requiring a person to enjoy every moment they have while alive. Since this balance is deeply personal, there is no universal formula to solve the problem of how much a person should invest for the future versus spend today. For example, the financial philosophy of the guppy fish is to reproduce immediately and live for the moment, because it is constantly under threat and unlikely to survive long, making long-term planning useless. In contrast, the Greenland shark has almost no predators and allocates its resources extremely slowly to maintenance and longevity, living for centuries. Nature is excellent at assessing risk and allocating resources efficiently, but humans are often terrible at forecasting their own lives and what they will regret. Financial philosophies that promote extreme saving, like the FIRE movement, risk causing people to regret having worked hard, saved money, and looked forward to freedom, only to realize they wasted their life along the way. Conversely, the opposite approach, the YOLO, or you only live once crowd, risks future regret by taking reckless financial chances in a rush to get rich quickly. The key is to minimize future regret, which involves realizing that different people will regret different things, and one's own regrets will change as they age. For instance, a young parent might regret not providing enough financial security for their family if they died early, while an older person whose children are settled might regret the experiences and trips they did not take. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos used the regret minimization framework to make his big decisions, projecting himself to age 80 and choosing the path that would leave him with the fewest regrets. One way to follow the principle of minimizing regret is to create good memories, which are the closest thing to living for today while compounding for tomorrow. Memories function like compounding assets, increasing in value and becoming more cherished over time. While cliched advice often suggests spending money on experiences, valuable memories often cost nothing, such as time spent with friends. However, money can help by buying time. For example, taking a lower-paying job with fewer hours trades money for 15,000 hours of potential memories over a career, which would be the best money ever spent and an ultimate antidote to regret. Finally, saving for the future is not sacrificing today. Instead, every dollar saved is a purchase of independence and freedom today, reducing stress and providing options for the future, which is a tangible benefit that helps guard against regret. Look at them. This chapter explores the intense emotions of jealousy and envy and stresses the importance of learning not to care what others think, especially regarding financial success and spending. The fundamental problem is that beyond basic survival needs, people often want things to place themselves higher in the social hierarchy, meaning their satisfaction is constantly measured against what others possess. This idea is illustrated by the story of astronaut Buzz Aldrin, who was the second human to walk on the moon. Even though this was an astounding accomplishment, he was known to resent not being the first more than he appreciated being second, showing how powerful jealousy can be in diminishing a person's achievements. The relentless human tendency to compare one's status or possessions to others is also seen in the story of entrepreneur Josh Kushner, who was in awe of his courtside seats at a basketball game until his wealthy friend pointed out that seats 5 chairs over were even better. This constant striving for the next, more exclusive level is what author C.S. Lewis called the inner ring, where people are perpetually disappointed once they achieve one level, immediately seeking the next higher one. The key message is that there's a critical difference between being motivated by what others have, which can be good because it exposes you to things you did not know existed, and being envious, which is described as a form of mental torture. Envy is always dangerous because it forces you to outsource your critical thinking to strangers and anchors your expectations to an endless group of people, making it impossible to feel satisfied or independent. Furthermore, chasing status is often a losing game because what is unique and enviable today eventually becomes common and less desirable as society changes and others acquire it, meaning the target is always moving. The most effective way to win this game is simply to stop playing it. By focusing on yourself and your own goals, you become less susceptible to the fear of missing out or FOMO, which is dangerous because it is recklessness disguised as ambition. Eliminating FOMO allows a person to focus only on their own goals, the opinions of those they care about, and thinking long-term. Ultimately, self-examination reduces envy, leading to the profound realization that independence is the goal, and when you are content with your own ring, jealous of no one, you are safe and free. Wealth without independence is a unique form of poverty. Having a large amount of money or wealth means very little if it does not translate into independence and freedom over one's life and time. The book distinguishes between simply being rich, which means having money to buy desired things, and being wealthy, which means having control over how that money influences one's freedom, desires, and mental health. Money that has been saved but not spent is never truly unspent. Instead, it is immediately spent on something intangible but valuable: freedom, independence, and the ability to use one's time in a chosen way. Every dollar saved acts as a claimed check on the future, while every dollar of debt allows someone else to control a piece of a person's future. Therefore, financial independence is the true definition of being rich, as it gives a person control over their schedule and intellectual choices, allowing them to do life their own way. This idea is powerfully illustrated by the contrasting stories of athletes. Former NBA player Antoine Walker earned over $100 million, but his lavish spending, which included numerous cars and supporting 30 friends and family, led him to bankruptcy, showing that he lost control of his life to his expenses. In contrast, NFL player John Urschel, who earned significantly less, saved the vast majority of his paycheck and was financially stable, enabling him to retire early to pursue a PhD and do whatever he wanted. Urschel's life is admired more because he maintained control over his decisions, using his money to create options and freedom. A person with immense wealth who relies heavily on debt or external factors can have less financial independence than someone considered poor. Wealth without the independence to act, choose, and control one's own time is therefore considered a unique form of poverty, because a person may be externally rich but internally trapped by reliance on bosses, bankers, or social pressures. The true goal is to use money as a tool to leverage who you are, never letting it define or control you. Social debt. Social debt refers to the unintended negative consequences that arise when how you spend your money changes how other people think of you, often in ways you eventually regret. It is considered a hidden form of debt, which makes it particularly dangerous because it does not appear on any financial spreadsheet, but creates very real liabilities in a person's life. Social debt can manifest in several ways. Sometimes, it takes the form of envy from others. For instance, a person who wins the lottery might become overwhelmed and even bankrupt because friends, family, and strangers feel entitled to ask for, beg for, or try to steal their money, leading to social exploitation and the loss of privacy. Frank Lucas, a drug dealer, became a marked man after showing off a $100,000 chinchilla coat at a major boxing match. The unwanted attention from law enforcement that followed led to his arrest, demonstrating how spending money to show off can bring unwanted scrutiny. For athletes who grow up in poverty, social debt often compels them to support dozens of relatives and friends, leading to financial ruin because they feel obligated to help people they may barely know. Another aspect of social debt is the increase in a person's own expectations or feelings of superiority. If a person's identity becomes tied to their possessions, they feel continuous pressure to impress others by constantly buying newer, bigger, and more expensive items, creating a hidden debt that requires future, ever-increasing spending just to keep the spotlight on them. This is why there is a saying that it's very expensive to be rich. Furthermore, buying nice things can also make a person ultra-sensitive to small issues. For example, someone who buys a quiet car might become deeply irritated by the slightest noise, or someone who buys a luxury car might lose their mind if it gets scratched, meaning the angst over keeping the item perfect is a social debt. If a person buys a nicer home to compete socially, their goalpost shifts immediately after the purchase, becoming a game they cannot win as they start dreaming of an even nicer house, resulting in an obsession. Ultimately, social debt is created when money shifts from being a helpful tool to being a symbol that others use to measure you. The goal is to avoid allowing one's spending to influence social life in disastrous ways, maintaining freedom, privacy, and independence. The most valuable financial position is often considered to be rich and anonymous, allowing a person to live an amazing life with virtually no social debt. Quiet compounding. The idea of quiet compounding centers on the principle that the most impressive and successful results are achieved slowly, silently, and over long periods of time, much like how nature creates giant sequoia trees or towering mountains. The phrase draws inspiration from the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who noted that nature is never in a hurry, yet everything is accomplished. This concept is perhaps the most cherished and important financial belief because it is simple and captures several powerful traits related to financial success. Quiet compounding is essentially the opposite of being loud and performing for others. The book often highlights stories of humble people with low-wage jobs and little formal education who managed to save and invest millions of dollars simply by quietly saving and investing for decades. Their superpower was maintaining a financial universe confined to their home, allowing them to play their own game, free from outside comparison or worry about how their investments performed compared to others. This private approach allows a person to be guided solely by their own desires, rather than being influenced by other people's goals or personalities. To practice quiet compounding, you must emphasize internal benchmarks over external ones, meaning you should be happy with your results even if no one else can see them, and you do not compare your success to others. When you stop playing the social comparison game, your focus shifts inward to what truly makes you and your family happy. Since the status game is impossible to win because someone is always getting richer faster than you, stopping the comparison allows you to enjoy your money regardless of how you spend it. Quiet compounding also involves the understanding that quick wealth tends to be fragile, while slow wealth is durable. Money earned quickly is often spent easily because the emotional cost of blowing it on frivolous items is low, much like an impulsive one-night stand. Quick wealth can also come from luck that might disappear just as fast, causing existential pain if you have increased your lifestyle based on a one-time windfall. So, the fastest way to become rich is to go slow, focusing on endurance and the ability to maintain good financial habits for the longest period of time. By fostering this quiet, long-term approach, you become less influenced by others' different goals and personalities, allowing your attention to focus on creating a better future life rather than chasing short-term attention. Identity. The idea of identity in the context of money warns that when financial goals and beliefs become ingrained as a core part of who a person is, money stops being a useful tool and instead becomes a demanding master that controls them. The goal is to use money to enhance who you are, such as being a good parent, spouse, or friend, but never allow money itself to become part of your essential identity. When a person says, "I am," they're forming an identity, and people will go to absurd lengths to protect these identities. A financial identity can be harmful because it prevents a person from adapting or changing course when necessary. For example, a person who identifies strongly as a saver might struggle to spend money responsibly in retirement, a challenge called frugality inertia. This person associates life success with their bank account constantly growing, making them unable to break away from intense saving even after they have met their financial goals. The focus on money itself becomes such an integral part of their personality that they are stuck, failing to recognize that they have met their goal. The danger of letting money define you is that it can control your personality and wedge out things that bring greater happiness. This is why one investor suggests keeping your identity small, arguing that the more labels you have for yourself, the less clearly you might think. When financial beliefs become rigid, they can turn cult-like, like the extreme frugality of the FIRE movement, where devotion to the philosophy can cause people to quit jobs they enjoy or harm their social lives, raising the question of who is actually in control. A person who successfully manages this balance views money only as a tool to leverage who they are, never letting it define them. This allows for independent thinking, meaning their spending habits are inconsistent. They spend a lot on what they value and very little on what they do not, forcing their money to work for their unique personality. Ultimately, valuing the ability to change your mind and lifestyle is the surest sign that a financial philosophy has not become a dangerous and controlling part of your identity. Try something new. Finding what truly makes you happy when spending money requires a strategy of constant experimentation, combined with ruthless rejection of what is not working. This approach is summarized by the saying, wide funnel and tight filter. The idea is that there are countless ways to spend money that might be perfect for one person but seem absurd to another. For example, one person might live for expensive international travel, while another prefers staying home. Some people love fine dining, while others prefer cheap pizza. Because these preferences are so unique, you cannot know what you truly like until you try it. Therefore, you should be willing to try spending on many different things: travel, clothes, food, or experiences, even if they only seem mildly interesting. This creates a wide funnel of new ideas. The second, crucial part of the strategy is applying a tight filter by cutting out anything that does not bring you joy or fulfillment, and doing so quickly and without guilt. Just as a reader should not force themselves to finish a bad book, you should immediately stop spending money on things that are not making you happier. By trying a million different things and quickly rejecting what is not right for you, you eventually find the unique purchases that truly fit your personality. If you do this while cutting the expenses that bring no joy, you will likely have enough money to spend extravagantly on the few things you genuinely love. Housel warns that if a person struggles to find their thing, it often means they are either addicted to saving money or blindly defaulting to what society and expensive brands tell them they should want. This constant desire for what society tells you to buy, which is usually the most expensive item, often misses the fact that premium prices often signal consistency, not necessarily superior quality or greater happiness. When you strip away the allure of a brand and focus on what makes you happy, you open yourself up to finding greater joy, even in less expensive, non-branded items. Ultimately, trying new things creates variety, which fights monotony, slows the perception of time, and adds a level of excitement to life. Your money and your kids. The topic, Your Money and Your Kids, addresses the challenging emotional problems that arise when parents use their money to help their children without accidentally spoiling them. This concern is widespread, affecting middle-class families dealing with allowances and college funds, as well as the very wealthy. Because the financial future of children is a deeply emotional topic, it cannot be solved simply with spreadsheets and numbers. It is fundamentally an issue of psychology, sociology, and emotion. One significant challenge for wealthy parents is the concept of inheritance, which legendary investor Charlie Munger suggested will inevitably ruin a child's drive and ambition. However, Munger also pointed out that if rich parents choose not to leave their children money, the children might end up hating them, creating a no-win situation where they must choose between spoiling their ambition or risking family strife. Billionaire Warren Buffett made a similar observation, noting that rich people who criticize welfare for creating dependent moochers are often giving their own children a lifetime supply of food stamps and beyond through trust funds and dividends. While a few rare individuals, such as Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, have ambitions so great that they would not be deterred by a large inheritance, most people need the fear of not making it to drive their success. For all parents, a nuance to consider is that parents and young children living together should generally share the same material lifestyle, so parents must choose that lifestyle carefully. If a parent lives extravagantly while demanding their child live modestly to learn hard work, the child may learn resentment rather than virtue. One friend's grandfather tried to teach hard work by forcing the children to hike up a mountain before earning a lift ticket, but the children only learned that grandpa is an asshole. Generational growth, or the feeling of doing as well or better than your parents, is crucial to well-being, and a child's mental health can be jeopardized if they cannot meet a parent's high financial expectations. Once children are grown and stable, the focus shifts to using money as a last resort safety net, never as a primary fuel. The goal is not to raise successful children, but to raise children who feel confident enough to find success on their own, which should be the side effect of giving them stability and emotional security. When children are young, parents should not spoil them, because learning the value of money requires feeling the power of scarcity. This teaches essential life skills like budgeting, saving, and valuing what you already possess. A crucial lesson is that kids are always paying attention to their parents' relationship with money. Children absorb financial values, not through explicit lectures, but through subtle clues. Hearing parents argue about spending, seeing them envious of a neighbor's car, or noticing when they are greedy or frugal. Parents should strive to show, by example, that money is a tool for living a better life and controlling one's time, never a means to show off for strangers or compensate for a lack of character. Ultimately, when a dying parent is thanked by their adult child, children from the best families tend to say, "Thank you for believing in me," while those from families with problems often thank the parent for something that costs money, such as a car or college tuition. Children may want money, but what they truly value and remember are the deeper qualities and the time spent together. Spreadsheets don't care about your feelings. Major financial decisions in life are often driven by powerful emotions, even though people commonly try to treat money problems like simple math exercises. Because finance is often taught as a science with neat formulas, people tend to focus solely on what is rational and methodical, but this ignores the essential, messy human component. The reality is that feelings are sometimes the most important part of a big financial decision. For instance, when deciding to buy a first home, a couple intended to make a calm, spreadsheet-based analysis, but their decision was immediately hijacked by emotion when they saw a tree swing in the front yard and imagined family moments. The night before their bid was accepted, the couple recognized that losing the house would be devastating, showing that emotions, not logic, were controlling the decision. No one thinks about buying a house in the same detached way they would buy a toaster. This emotional value is further demonstrated by the memories attached to objects, which cannot be measured on a spreadsheet. One person selling her longtime home admitted she had no physical attachment to the structure, but could not easily leave behind the fact that everything important that ever happened in her family took place there. It is impossible to assign a dollar figure to the value of memories, but these subjective feelings are often the core motivation behind important financial choices. The ideal way to manage money is at the intersection of logic and emotion, where a person is driven by both rational math and emotional joy. The successful approach is to be responsible with numbers, but also to know how to make those numbers work for one's soul. The subjective, emotional part of the brain is often in control, and Housel suggests that it should be in control because it understands what a person truly wants better than any spreadsheet ever could. Managing money becomes simpler when it is viewed as an emotional problem to fulfill rather than just a math problem to solve, all within appropriate budgetary limits. The finer things. This chapter delves into the contradiction of whether it is worthwhile to focus intensely on small, everyday expenses in a budget, concluding that obsessing over such purchases can be both life-changing and a total waste of time. The opposing views on this topic are equally persuasive. On one hand, tending to small expenses can lead to massive financial impact over time due to the power of compounding. This concept is illustrated by historical examples of extreme frugality. For instance, President Calvin Coolidge's administration obsessed over the cost of every single piece of government correspondence, which cost 26 cents per letter, totaling nearly 7% of all government spending at the time. Similarly, John D. Rockefeller saved what amounted to about $20 million in today's money simply by reducing the amount of solder used on oil cans by just one drop. These stories show that small changes, when applied across a massive scale or compounded over decades, have a profound impact. Focusing on small, easy-to-ignore expenses prevents them from becoming a slow drip that overwhelms the large, obvious costs, demonstrating that people are often defeated by blisters rather than mountains. However, the opposing view argues that focusing too much attention on trivial items is a waste of time and can distract from much larger, more critical issues. This idea is known as Parkinson's law of triviality, which suggests that the attention a problem receives is the inverse of its actual importance. People often worry intensely about relatively tiny expenses, such as the cost of a daily latte, while ignoring much larger financial decisions, such as the expense of a college education, a home, or a car. A classic anecdote highlights this. A person calculated that a coworker's daily latte habit could have amounted to enough money to buy a Ferrari if invested. Yet when asked where his own savings were, he had no Ferrari either. For the majority of people, financial success hinges on controlling a handful of big expenses like college, home, and health insurance, making everything else a mere rounding error. Housel suggests that the best way to handle money involves a balanced or barbell approach. It is almost impossible to build wealth without controlling your biggest expenses, but it is also very difficult to grow wealth without caring about the smaller expenses. Being successful with money requires knowing how to both reduce and exclude what does not work, which often involves treating the big picture seriously while not letting the obsession with small details consume your focus. The life cycle of greed and fear. The life cycle of greed and fear describes a common and dangerous pattern of emotional decision-making in financial life that often ends exactly where it begins. This cycle shows how seemingly innocent optimism can slowly turn into harmful greed, which eventually collapses into paralyzing fear. The cycle begins with the innocent idea that a person deserves to be right and should be rewarded for their effort and correct decisions. Because success feels good and is addictive, the reward reinforces the belief that the person's actions caused the positive outcome, even if luck or other factors were involved. This feeling of deserving success leads to greed, as the person, encouraged by admiration from others, chooses to double down on what worked in the past with twice the appetite, demanding more pay or spending more on status symbols. Greed is essentially expecting to receive more than one deserves based on their input, often because they overestimate their ability to control outcomes. When this unsustainable strategy inevitably backfires, the person, initially blinded by the belief that they are right, views the failure not as a mistake, but as an opportunity, often doubling down on their original actions out of stubbornness and determination. This persistence, however, makes them immune to corrective feedback, escalating the failure. Eventually, this leads to denial and self-pity, where the person views themselves as a victim and blames everyone else, such as friends, bosses, or politicians, anything except their own inflated views of their skills. When mistakes become undeniable, forcing massive lifestyle changes like selling a house or car, the person becomes embarrassed and enters a panic state. The panic quickly escalates into fear. In this state of fear, the mindset shifts entirely from growth to damage control, causing the person to abandon their assets, career, and opportunities, believing that nothing they do is in their control. Just as greed caused them to be blind to the negative, fear makes them blind to the positive opportunities that may exist during chaos. Eventually, the fear gives way to acceptance, and the person finds stability. Vowing to never repeat the painful mistakes of the past, they form a new worldview, believing they have earned the right to be smarter now after the painful grind. This newly fortified belief that they are right and deserve to be rewarded resets the psychological loop, right back to the beginning of the greed cycle. The overall cycle shows that innocent optimism can transform into dangerous liability, emphasizing that success lies in finding the delicate balance between optimism and greed and pessimism and fear. How to be miserable spending your money. This chapter provides a satirical, backward guide by outlining the exact financial behaviors and mindsets that are guaranteed to result in unhappiness. Since it is difficult to determine a perfect formula for happiness, the goal is to work in reverse, identifying and excluding everything that leads to misery, a strategy that evolution often uses to select for success. One guaranteed path to misery is constantly focusing on the socioeconomic group just above your own, assuming that this next level of income or possessions will finally bring lasting contentment. This involves ignoring the fact that the group you are currently in was once your dream goal that failed to bring you durable happiness. To amplify this misery, you should relentlessly pursue status, the desire for others to be impressed by your material goods, while neglecting the pursuit of independence and the hidden magic of owning your own time. To be truly miserable, you must allow money to become a defining part of who you are, making the relentless pursuit, spending, or saving of money a core part of your identity. This means spending more time thinking about money itself than thinking about the actual life you're building with that money. You should constantly fantasize that having more money is the solution to every problem, believing that money would fix all your anxieties, grant you more friends, and make you more admired. Conversely, you can also ensure misery by assuming money can solve none of your problems and is the root of all evil, leading you to disregard its remarkable power as a tool for independence and comfort. Further steps include spending so much of your income that you become completely dependent on external decisions made by bosses and bankers who do not care about your well-being. If you adopt a strict saving ideology that prevents you from ever treating yourself to a good life you can easily afford, money becomes a mere accounting hobby instead of a tool for living better. To maximize misery, compare your inner feelings and doubts with the curated, external appearances of others, assuming that their fancy cars, homes, and social media posts are an accurate reflection of their deep happiness and moral clarity. You must also continuously anchor your lifestyle expectations to the most successful people you know, which creates a mindset where even exceptional success in your own life feels insufficient, effectively signing a contract with yourself to remain unhappy. Finally, ignore the hidden social costs of purchases, such as the envy you stir in others or the higher standards you set for your own future purchases, which is a hidden form of debt. The luckier you are, the nicer you should be. While kindness is morally good because of empathy, it is also a practical, self-serving policy because you can never predict whom you might need help from in the future. The idea emphasizes that the more fortunate a person is, the more important it is for them to appreciate the non-financial aspects of life and treat everyone with respect, regardless of their appearance or success. This concept is vividly illustrated by the story of actor Kevin Costner and his struggling writer friend. Costner was initially dismissive of his friend, viewing him as a stray cat to pity and refusing even to read his work, largely because the friend was homeless and had a reputation for angering people. Yet, the manuscript a friend was writing while staying at Costner's house turned out to be Dances with Wolves, which became a blockbuster film that won 7 Academy Awards and catapulted Costner's career into superstardom. This extreme example highlights that a person who does not look like the picture of success might hold the wisdom or key to your future success, making it essential never to underestimate anyone. The principle suggests that the modern tendency to link wealth with wisdom is dangerous because it makes people ignore those who do not dress, live, or earn a certain way. A successful life is often the result of being a beneficiary of a prosperous era, living in a prosperous region, and having opportunities to learn and express yourself, all accumulated efforts from people who came before you. Because of this immense, often unseen, luck, people should go out of their way to appreciate what money cannot buy and understand that money can highlight or magnify an incredible life, but cannot create one by itself. Ultimately, whether someone has ended up with a different outcome than you, they are still just as smart, worthy, and trying to find their way in a complex world, meaning all behavior makes sense with enough information.